Jungkook became one of the biggest talking points surrounding BTS's return to Chicago, as thousands of ARMY filled Soldier Field for the group's long-awaited return to the city. But amid the massive production, the roaring crowd, and 7 members sharing the stage again, one question kept coming back. Why did Jungkook seem to command so much attention during the Chicago stop? The answer goes deeper than a few viral clips. BTS returned to Chicago for the ARIRANG World Tour, bringing the group's massive stadium production to Soldier Field. For fans, this was more than another stop on a world tour. It was a long-awaited reunion between BTS and a city that had been waiting years to see the group perform again. And right in the middle of that enormous comeback was Jeon Jungkook, the youngest member of BTS, the Golden Maknae. And now, after years of growth as both a group member and a solo artist, a performer with an entirely different level of experience behind him. That difference was something fans immediately began talking about. It wasn't simply that Jungkook looked confident on stage. It was the way his presence seemed to travel through the entire stadium. One moment, he was performing alongside the other BTS members. The next, thousands of fans were screaming at a particular expression, a dance move, a vocal moment, or a brief interaction with the audience. And once those moments started appearing online, the conversation grew even bigger. Suddenly, Jungkook wasn't just part of the Chicago concert story. He was becoming one of its central talking points. But there is something important to understand before going any further. When fans say Jungkook dominated the Chicago concert, that doesn't mean BTS suddenly became a Jungkook solo show. BTS remains a 7-member group, and the entire production is built around the chemistry, performances, and individual strengths of all 7 members. What fans are describing is something more specific. Jungkook's ability to capture attention. And that ability has become increasingly obvious over the years. Think about the journey he has taken. Jungkook debuted as BTS's youngest member, entering the group when he was still incredibly young. From the beginning, he was known for his versatility. Singing, dancing, performing, learning, adapting, and constantly improving. That is where the nickname Golden Maknae became so closely associated with him. But the Jungkook standing on the Chicago stage today is no longer the same young performer fans first discovered. He has grown into an established global artist, and his solo career played a major role in that transformation. When Jungkook released solo music and began performing without the other BTS members beside him, audiences were given a completely different perspective. There was nowhere to hide, no group formation to share the spotlight, no other members to carry a section of the performance. It was simply Jungkook, his voice, his movement, his personality, and the audience. And he proved that he could handle it. That experience matters now that he is back on a BTS stadium stage. Because when Jungkook performs with BTS today, he brings the confidence of someone who already knows what it feels like to command an audience alone. That confidence can be seen in the smallest details. The way he walks onto the stage, the way he holds a note, the way he moves during choreography, the way he reacts when the crowd suddenly becomes louder, even the way he looks toward the cameras. These details may seem insignificant individually, but when they happen in front of tens of thousands of people, they can create a powerful effect. And Chicago gave Jungkook exactly the kind of environment where that effect could become impossible to ignore. The stadium was packed with ARMY. Fans had traveled from different cities and different parts of the country. Some had waited years for this moment. Others had followed Jungkook throughout his solo era and were now seeing him return to BTS. That creates an unusual emotional atmosphere. Fans aren't simply watching a concert. They're watching a chapter of an artist's career unfold in front of them. And for Jungkook, that chapter is particularly meaningful. Because his return to BTS comes after a period in which his individual identity became stronger than ever. His solo releases introduced his voice to even more listeners around the world. His performances demonstrated that he could carry enormous stages by himself. And his global popularity continued to grow. So when he stepped onto the Chicago stage with BTS, fans weren't just seeing the Golden Maknae they remembered. They were seeing the Golden Maknae after years of evolution. That distinction is important. There is a noticeable difference between being talented and being comfortable with your talent. Young performers often have something to prove. Experienced performers don't need to prove as much. They simply perform. And Jungkook's stage presence increasingly has that quality. He doesn't always look like he's trying to capture attention. Sometimes it feels like attention naturally moves toward him. That may be one reason his concert clips are so effective online. A few seconds can tell an entire story. A facial expression, a sudden smile, powerful vocal line, perfectly timed movement, a playful reaction to the audience. These are the moments fans replay. And when thousands of fans are recording simultaneously, the number of potential viral moments increases dramatically. One person captures Jungkook from the front. Another records him from the side. Someone else catches a reaction from the crowd. Another fan posts a close-up. Within minutes, different versions of the same moment can begin circulating. That is how a concert becomes an online event. And Jungkook has become particularly powerful in that environment. His performance style works both from a distance and through a close-up camera. Inside a stadium, fans see the full scale of his performance. Online, viewers see the details. And sometimes those details are what create the strongest reaction. This is also where the discussion about the mysterious nickname comes in. As clips from the Chicago concert circulated, fans began using dramatic descriptions to explain Jungkook's impact. Some posts went even further, suggesting that American media had given Jungkook a new title after seeing his performance. That claim should be treated carefully. There is a difference between a nickname created or popularized by fans and a nickname officially established by major media outlets. At the moment, the bigger and safer takeaway is that Jungkook's performance generated significant attention and discussion among fans. And honestly, that is already interesting enough. Because why did fans feel the need to give him another title in the first place? The answer may have more to do with his evolution than with one particular performance. Jungkook has spent years developing a stage identity that feels increasingly distinct. He can be powerful without looking forced, charismatic without constantly exaggerating his expressions, playful one moment and intensely focused the next. That range is valuable for a performer, especially when you're performing a massive stadium show. The audience needs moments that feel explosive, but they also need moments that feel personal. Jungkook can move between both, and that's something fans noticed again in Chicago. The scale of the venue could have made every performer look small. Soldier Field is enormous. The stage is enormous. The audience stretches far beyond what one person can physically see. Yet Jungkook still manages to create the impression that he is connecting directly with individual fans. That is one of the strange powers of stadium performance. One person can be surrounded by tens of thousands of people and somehow make a single fan feel noticed. A glance toward a section, a smile, a wave, a gesture. For the person receiving it, that moment can become unforgettable. And when that moment is captured on camera, it becomes unforgettable for thousands more. That's why fan culture plays such an important role in Jungkook's popularity. ARMY doesn't simply consume performances. They document them. They analyze them. They share them. They preserve them. A moment that lasts 2 seconds inside the stadium can live online for years. And Jungkook has generated an enormous number of those moments throughout his career. But Chicago felt different because of the history behind it. This wasn't just another city. It was BTS returning after a long absence. The anticipation had been building for years. The city itself embraced the occasion. Fans filled the area around the stadium. Purple appeared throughout the city. And inside Soldier Field, the emotional energy was impossible to ignore. For Jungkook, that kind of crowd can be both overwhelming and motivating. Imagine standing on a stage and hearing tens of thousands of people respond to your voice. Then imagine knowing that many of those people have followed your career since you were a teenager. Some watched you grow up. Some discovered you during BTS's biggest years. Some found you through your solo music. And some may have become fans only recently. All of those people are now standing in the same stadium. That's what makes a BTS concert so unusual. It brings different generations of fans together. And Jungkook sits at the center of that timeline. He's young enough to still have that youthful energy fans associate with him, but experienced enough to perform like someone who has spent more than a decade on some of the biggest stages in the world. That combination is difficult to replicate, and it may be one reason the Golden Maknae nickname has remained so powerful. But there is also something else happening. Jungkook's identity as a solo artist has made people pay closer attention to his individual strengths. Before his solo career, fans often discussed Jungkook as part of BTS. Now, they can compare his group performances with his solo performances. They can see how his voice changes depending on the setting. They can see how he handles a stage when he's alone. And they can see how he reintegrates that confidence when he's surrounded by the other members. That comparison makes his growth easier to recognize. It's not necessarily that Jungkook suddenly became more talented. He was already talented. The difference is that the audience now understands his abilities more clearly. And Chicago provided another opportunity to see that development. The interesting part is that Jungkook doesn't need to overpower the other members to stand out. BTS works because each member has a different identity. RM brings leadership and presence. Jeon brings his own charisma and humor. Suga brings intensity and musicality. J-Hope brings extraordinary performance energy. Jimin brings elegance and emotional expression. V brings his distinctive tone and personality. And Jungkook brings a combination of vocals, dance, athletic movement, and youthful energy that has always made him unique. When all seven come together, the contrast makes each member more visible. Jungkook's strength becomes clearer because of the people around him. That's why saying he dominated should be understood as a description of attention, not a literal ranking of the members. And that distinction makes the story much more interesting. Because if Jungkook can command attention while still functioning naturally inside the BTS dynamic, that says something about how much he has grown. He's not trying to separate himself from the group. He's bringing his individual experience back into it. And perhaps that's the biggest difference between Jungkook then and Jungkook now. He no longer needs to choose between being a BTS member and being an individual artist. He can be both. That balance is especially important for the future of his career. Jungkook's solo career has already shown what he can accomplish independently. His BTS career continues to show what happens when that talent is combined with 6 other highly distinctive performers. And the intersection of those two identities could become one of the most interesting parts of the group's new era. Chicago offered fans a glimpse of that. Not through one dramatic announcement, not through a huge statement, but through performance, through confidence, through the way Jungkook moved across the stage, through the way fans responded, and through the clips that continued circulating after the concert. That's often how real impact is measured in modern pop culture. Not only by what happens during the show, but by what people continue talking about afterward. A performance ends. The conversation doesn't. And Jungkook's Chicago appearance clearly gave ARMY plenty to talk about. Fans began comparing different clips. Some focused on his vocals. Others focused on his dancing. Some couldn't stop talking about his expressions. Others highlighted his interactions with the audience. And some simply pointed out how different he looked compared with earlier BTS eras. That last reaction is particularly interesting, because when fans say Jungkook looks different, they're not necessarily talking about appearance. They're talking about presence. The confidence of someone who has lived through several major chapters of his career. The maturity of someone who has already experienced the pressure of global solo promotion. The comfort of a performer who knows exactly what he can do on stage. And yet, despite all that experience, there are still moments when Jungkook looks genuinely excited to be performing with BTS again. That contrast is what makes the current tour so compelling. The superstar is there. The solo artist is there. The Golden Maknae is there. But so is the Jungkook who still reacts to ARMY with that familiar sense of warmth and surprise. Chicago brought all of those sides together. And perhaps that's why the conversation surrounding him has become so intense. People aren't only watching a singer perform. They're watching an artist's evolution. They're watching someone who debuted as the youngest member of a rising Korean group become one of the most recognizable K-pop performers in the world. And they're watching him do it while returning to the group that started the journey. That's a powerful story on its own. But the Chicago concert may have revealed another piece of that story. Jungkook no longer looks like someone waiting for his moment. He looks like someone who understands that the moment is already his. And as fans continued replaying the footage from Soldier Field, the question surrounding his performance became less about whether Jungkook could command a stadium and more about what this new version of Jungkook could mean for the rest of BTS's journey. Because if Chicago was any indication, the Golden Maknae has returned to the BTS stage with something that wasn't there in quite the same way before. The confidence of an artist who has already learned how to stand alone, and now knows exactly how powerful he can be when he stands with BTS again. And perhaps that is the part of Jungkook's Chicago performance that deserves the most attention. Not simply the screaming crowd. Not simply the viral clips. Not even the dramatic nicknames fans have been using online. It is the transformation behind all of it. For years, fans watched Jungkook grow within BTS. They watched the shy youngest member gradually become more confident, more expressive, and more comfortable under the spotlight. Then came his solo era, when he had to step onto enormous stages without the safety and chemistry of the other 6 members. He learned how to carry those moments himself. Now he's back with BTS. And instead of losing the confidence he gained as a solo performer, he appears to be bringing it with him. That may be why his presence feels so noticeable during this new chapter. Jungkook doesn't need to compete with BTS. He doesn't need to prove that he can be the center of attention. He simply performs. And when that performance connects with tens of thousands of people, the reaction happens naturally. For ARMY, there is also something deeply emotional about watching this happen in Chicago. 7 years ago, Jungkook was a much younger artist standing beside 6 other members as BTS continued building its legacy in the United States. Now he is returning as a global solo star, a seasoned performer, and one of the most recognizable faces of K-pop. Yet when he steps onto the stage with BTS, there is still something familiar about him. The smile, the playful energy, the connection with ARMY, the unmistakable excitement when the crowd gets loud. That combination of growth and familiarity is perhaps what makes this era so special. And the Chicago audience was able to experience it firsthand. The city didn't simply welcome BTS back. It reminded everyone just how powerful the connection between BTS and American ARMY has become. Purple lights across Chicago. Thousands of fans gathering around Soldier Field. A stadium filled with voices singing along. And 7 members standing together again after years of waiting. Within that larger picture, Jungkook's individual spotlight became impossible to ignore. Still, the most fascinating part may be what happens after the Chicago concerts. Because every performance creates new footage. Every new clip gives fans something to analyze. Every city adds another chapter to the tour. And every stage gives Jungkook another opportunity to show how much he has changed. The Chicago shows are not the end of this story. They are another checkpoint. Another snapshot of Jungkook at a particular moment in his career. And if the reaction continues at the same level throughout the tour, the conversation around his stage presence is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. There will be more cities, more stadiums, more cameras, more fan recordings, more moments that suddenly explode across social media. And somewhere in all of that, another Jungkook moment will inevitably appear. Maybe it will be a vocal performance. Maybe it will be a dance break. Maybe it will be something completely unexpected that nobody planned for. That's part of what makes following Jungkook so exciting. You never quite know which 3-second moment will become the clip everyone is talking about the next morning. For now, though, Chicago has already delivered something memorable. BTS returned to the city after 7 years. ARMY showed up in overwhelming numbers. And Jungkook once again demonstrated why his name continues to carry enormous weight in the global K-pop conversation. Whether or not a particular nickname becomes an official media label is almost secondary. The real evidence is right there in the reaction. Fans noticed him. Fans talked about him. Fans replayed his moments. and his performance became part of the larger conversation surrounding BTS's return. That is the kind of impact every major performer hopes to create. And Jungkook appears to be doing it without forcing the moment. He simply walks onto the stage and performs like someone who knows exactly where he belongs. The Golden Maknae has grown up. The solo artist has found his confidence. And the BTS member is back where millions of fans have been waiting to see him. On a massive stage, under the lights, with 6 familiar faces beside him, and tens of thousands of ARMY singing his name. Chicago may have been just another stop on the ARIRANG World Tour. But for Jungkook and the fans watching closely, it felt like something much bigger. It felt like a reminder of how far he has come, and just how much attention follows him wherever he goes.